CEO in that way.
Kath, can you hear me? Lee, is anyone there who's going to tell me we are live?
Have to start streaming.
We're about to start streaming.
Good to go.
Ready to go?
Good go, Mr. Mayor. 7 o'clock.
Evening, councillors and council staff, to the ordinary council meeting of the 21st of September 2021.
Recording in progress.
Thank you very much for that. I will start by introducing Mr. Robert McLean, who will lead us in prayer. Thanks, Robert. Are you there? Robert, can you unmute yourself and
He's there,
he's there.
muted and camera.
There we go. Hi. Evening, Robert. How are you? Sorry, that's
Well, thank you.
thank you very, very much for coming this evening to lead us in prayer. So it's over to you, Robert. Thank you.
Okay, let us pray. Lord God, you are a rock and a refuge in this ever-changing world. You are the one who has made us. You've placed us in this world. We seek your help that we may serve well in the tasks entrusted to us. Lord, I pray for these councillors as they meet tonight. Please give them wisdom in dealing with the matters that come before them. May they be enabled to make decisions based on truth and compassion. Give to each one the ability to discern the real issues and in humility to make decisions that will promote the good of our community. Lord, we pray for those in need in our community, especially those whose lives have been impacted by the pandemic. Father, for those who are suffering illness, bring them relief and healing. For those who've lost work or business because of restrictions, provide what's necessary for life and a more secure future. For those in grief, may they know your comfort in their time of loss. Father, for those who struggle with depression and other mental illness, bring them renewed hope and purpose. Those who are struggling with the isolation caused by restrictions, Father, comfort them, give them strength to endure. Lord, as the council looks to the future for our community as we live with this virus, give them insight and understanding to find the best pathways ahead. Father, give them courage to follow those paths. We thank you for the work done by the council staff. We pray that you will strengthen them for their tasks that lie ahead in the coming weeks and months. We commit all the discussion and decisions of this evening to you. We pray it through the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks very much for that, Robert. I'm quite sure that you've got lots of activities and things you want to be involved tonight. And otherwise, I know you'd love to stay with us.
Yeah, thank you. I have my own Zoom meetings a little while I have to get to too.
Good on you. Thanks very much, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Have a good evening.
And just before we start, Council, I do have this tie on for a reason. In 1999, 2000, Australian Wallabies held every major rugby trophy in the world. And it's taken us 20 years to win one of them back. We just won the Nelson Mandela Trophy because we beat South Africa twice. So it's not bad, 20 years to go from holding every major trophy to holding one.
I'm so excited.
I'm over the moon about it, actually. They're going a lot better than St. George. I'd ask the Chief Executive Officer to read any apologies we have this evening.
Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Taylor as an apology this evening.
Thank you very much. And no others.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor.
Moved. Councillor Whitten, seconded. So Councillor Hamling, all in favour? Against. Thank you. This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting, that you ensure that you're respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. Our recording will be made for administrative purposes. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Does any councillor wish to declare any conflicts of interest in any matter for consideration at the council meeting tonight?
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 5.3 regarding to the Business HQ documentation. Just letting councillors know that I'm the council appointed director on the board of Business HQ. That's a voluntary role. And but I would just like to declare that. I don't see any reason to leave the meeting for that vote on that issue. Item 5.9, which 224 of your notes. That's with regards to the allocation of funds from the 2021-2022 Sports Facility Partnership Program. I would like to declare an interest in that, a conflict of interest, as I'm the president of the Orange District Football Association, and the Orange District Football Association have been recommended for a grant in there. So I'll be happy to leave the room whilst that voting takes place, if need be.
Thanks, Councillor Miletto. I would like to declare an interest in item 5.6, which is development application DA 285/2021 in brackets 1, 8 Curran Street, because that is opposite a set of units owned by my son. So I'll be declaring it is not a pecuniary interest that I have, but my son does own units on the opposite side of the street. So I will not be voting on the matter, but I will be attending the meeting. Thank you. Any others? If there's not, we have some late items. Item 6.6 is lease of the clubhouse at Mulder Park. Now, has everyone got a copy of that?
No.
No. No.
See,
electronic copy.
Okay. Could we recirculate, please, the electronic copy, staff? Thank you.
and I'll need a hard copy because
And the mayor is in his office, so we can get a hard copy to the mayor, please. Councillor Hamley, would you like a hard copy in my office?
I'd also like a hard copy, Mr. CEO.
And where are you, Councillor Duffy? In the office? Oh, yeah.
Yep. They know where I am.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that gives us a bit of time to circulate that to you,
no worries.
Mr. Mayor. We'll get on that.
No move that we accept that late item.
I'm happy to move it, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Second, Councillor Nugent. All in favour? Great. Item 2, there are no Merrill minutes. Item 3 is confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Item 3.1, minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 7th of September.
Move the minutes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Whitten.
Councillor Whitten, seconded. Councillor Duffy. All in favour? Against? There's no one against. Thank you. We move down to item 4. First of all, 4.1 is a notice of motion of investigation into solar lighting on Wirraburra Walk.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that if I can get a seconder for
Happy
discussion.
to second it, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Hamling, seconded Councillor Nugent.
Mr. Mayor, I raised this at the last meeting. I've just brought it forward, so I spoke about that being contacted by people. Actually, speaking to people while I've been walking. They'd love to see that stretch lit somehow. I understand we don't want to light it so it upsets neighbours that are adjoining that walk. So any sort of lighting that would do the lighting plus not upset neighbours, if we could look into, that'd be fantastic.
Thanks, Councillor Hamling. Any other speakers? Councillor Nugent.
Yeah, look, happy to support the motion for a report into options for this. It sort of brings into, or there's two issues that are sort of near to my heart. There's renewable energy, of course, with the solar lighting suggestion, and also that area is a leaf-free area. So in my role as Companion Animals Community Chair, happy to support it from that perspective as well. It is a very well-used facility. There's lots of foot traffic along that area. Obviously, there are some logistics in terms of avoiding light spillage into the neighbours' properties and the costs. And I note there that we're sort of talking about potentially, I think, $100,000 to $200,000. So we're probably looking at a budget bid for next financial year, but a report will sort of help us to determine what those costs might be to feed into that budget process. So from that point of view, I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Maletta.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Hamling on the motion. What I like about the motion is it's an opportunity to increase safety around the area. As we know, there are a lot of women, men, children who traverse that area around there. And there are a lot of people in this town who work long hours and don't get home till around dark, and it's an opportunity for them to utilise that area. So I fully support that from a safety point of view.
Yeah, look, I'll support it, but I've had a number of people ring me too, concerned about what sort of lighting, and I just said this is a feasibility study to look at low, lux lighting. So I've had a number of people contact me about lighting, and they're concerned about lighting showing into their bedrooms or into lounge rooms, and some of them are wondering about could that be a security issue with them making their homes more visible at night time. And I said, well, look, at this stage, it's a feasibility. That'll be coming back to council, and you will have every opportunity to have input into that. And of course, well, I think Councillor Nugent said it, there are a number of places where we've got to look at security and security lighting, and I'm sure that will be a budget item for next year. So I support it. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I got the similar comments to what you have. As long as the neighbourhood is consulted with it in regards to the funding, I think there'll have to be a budget for next year. But I also remember the Esso Park and the Cook Park lights. You know, I haven't seen much around with those ones up there. So let's hope it doesn't get lost like those.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just close the debate. Yeah, and as I said before, it has to be in consultation with neighbours. We don't want, they live along there. That's their houses along there. So I suppose, yeah, whatever lighting is feasible. Hopefully those little solar lights, maybe the one to go. But I've been spoken to about overshadowing and shadowing from the trees, which mightn't light the batteries up to use the solar light. So as I said, this is a feasibility study. As you said, Mr. Mayor, it will come back to council if we go ahead with it. But yeah.
Okay, I think I'll put the motion. All in favour? Show of hands, thanks. Against? There's none against, thank you. We move on to 4.2 is notice of motion, Afghan refugees in Orange.
Happy to move the motion, Mr. Mayor, if I can have someone happy to second it.
We've got a mover in Councillor.
I'll second it for discussion, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity to hear or whether the council is going to would entertain the idea of hearing each of these matters in CRM.
Certainly, if you want to move that one. If you move that way, I'll second it, Councillor Werther. There you go.
Yes, if you don't mind.
Councillor Werther, moving that we look at the options 1, 2 and 3 in seriatim. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? Rightio. Councillor Nugent, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's only a few weeks since we watched as the Australian, US and other Western forces left Afghanistan, and the Taliban quickly overwhelmed the local army and governments. The tragic images of locals trying to escape from Kabul airport left many of us very distressed. But since that time, the plight of Afghan refugees has largely dropped off the mainstream media landscape in the face of ongoing COVID reporting, which of course is very important, and more recently, nuclear submarines. But that doesn't mean that the crisis of Afghan refugees has gone away, both for those still living in Afghanistan and those who have escaped but remain stateless. The Australian government has committed to take 3,000 refugees from Afghanistan, but there are reports that 12,000 refugees have already applied to come to Australia, and potentially that number is increasing every day. So there's a great sort of shortfall between what the Australian government has currently committed to take and the number of people that are hoping to resettle in Australia. So this motion has three parts. It acknowledges the contribution that refugees and migrants have made to Orange, and offers support at this time to any Australians of Afghan background who are currently living in Orange. I understand from discussions with some local members of the mosque that there may be some local families of Afghan background already here. Secondly, it welcomes Afghan refugees to come and settle in Orange in accordance with our status as a welcome refugee zone. So those Afghan refugees that are sort of resettling in Australia, I would like to see Orange sort of say, we would welcome you here if you wish to come and live in this part of our great country. And it calls on the federal government to urgently review the current intake of Afghan refugees in the light of that shortfall that I was talking about before. I think this is a statement of intent. It's a statement of commitment to our status as a welcome refugee zone. And it does present some opportunities, I think. I was actually contacted today by a local journalist and producer who works with SBS, and he said he has a plethora of contacts that might be of use if this motion is approved, and that we proceed down that track. In terms of supporting our migrant, refugee and support program, which already operates and is a great program that supports a lot of people in the local community. So I think Orange is much richer for the migrant and refugees who have come here and settled. And I would like to see us reaffirm our commitment to welcoming refugees in line with our welcome refugee status that this council moved and approved back in May 2019. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nugent. Any other?
I've got a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, a couple of questions that I've got. First of all, the first one's a motherhood statement, and I don't take much notice to that one. The second one is that I would like to think that we'd be welcoming more than just the Afghan refugees. And I think the third one I 100% support. But I also want to know on the second one, what's the dollar cost there? I know Leeton and other councils are involved in accepting refugees, not only from Afghanistan, but from a number of other places. I just want to know what the intake is, if there's any cost to the council involved in that. And do we have the accommodation? Can someone answer that?
Councillor Maletta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I certainly understand the spirit of the notice of motion. However, I do have a couple of concerns and questions. As Councillor Duffy said, I believe that we currently should be welcoming any migrants of any ethnicity. It should be up to the government to decide the numbers of immigrants and refugees that can be successfully integrated into our society. I think that an important consideration has to be given to the regional area's ability to provide housing to refugees and immigrants when Orange already has the longest waiting list of people waiting to acquire public housing already. based on the information which I've read and been provided, most rental accommodation in Orange are not affordable or in the reach of families and individuals. The critical shortage supply of public housing can mean many years of waiting on the longest list for people waiting for public housing in New South Wales. There is an overwhelming demand already for existing housing in Orange. So the question is, it wise to bring new arrivals to Orange? There are already hundreds of people seeking affordable housing in Orange, and would it be fair or wise to add more people to this list? I think before the government commit to making the queue longer, they should address the current crisis situation in inadequate housing for low-income earners and their families. With regards to the religion, my opinion is that religious diversity is an area best kept out of council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lodo. Any other speak? Look, if I may, I can understand the intent, but I would point out, I was thinking about it because on Friday, when we had another 43 people did their citizenship ceremony, and they represented 15 different countries. Now, I don't know how many of those were migrants or refugees, but I do know Orange has been involved in taking in refugees and migrants since First World War, and very, very much so post the Second World War. The street that I lived in was mainly made up of Dutch, Italian, and what was called White Russian, at that stage Baltic states, that had been persecuted in the Second World War, and came here as refugees and have done an incredible contribution to Orange. I think that the one part I don't like the way it's written up is that Orange has always had open arms and support mechanisms for refugees and migrants coming into Orange. The diversity of different people that we have in Orange is quite incredible, and they all add something to the Orange culture. We're one of the few councils that I know that has a designated position, and that's Annie Gallagher, that looking at whether it be migrants or refugees, no matter what, or other people come into Orange, in supporting them and helping them in a whole range of issues like housing, meeting other people, education for their children, health, and so forth. We hold a Harmony Day here in Orange. This year we've done over 400 citizenship ceremonies. 400 people have been through citizenship ceremonies. So I just question, Councillor Nugent says SBS have contacted, would be interested in making this a story. I would hope they'd contact Orange and make a story about what we've been doing for the last 60 or 70 years, and we continue to do unheralded. Now, there may have been a motion pulled back in 2019 that makes a comment, it's tokenism. We do it. This community has been doing it for many, many years. I understand the plight of people coming out. You only have to look at what happened post-Vietnam with Cambodians, Vietnamese and Laotians. I've also been in Burma and understand the problems that, in fact, the atrocities that are happening in Burma. That's completely off the map at the moment. What's happening to a minority group in China is completely off at the map at the moment, and in other countries around the world. So I would hope that all countries, and particularly all towns, had sensibilities towards helping and supporting people. If I can just say one other thing too, it is an interesting something that has to be considered. When you want to support people, the support is about that. You have to be able to house them. You have to be able to integrate them into the community so they have employment. You also have to look at the education of their children, and the people themselves may want to learn English as a second language, or a whole range of things like that. I will not mention what happened at one stage when the government made some decisions on refugees into Australia and where they would go, and Orange was one of the places. And we had a disaster on our hands because we didn't have sufficient housing, put them in housing in the wrong place. And lo and behold, the poor ladies in those groups were trying to look after children, have them educated with very, very little other support. And that problem just disappeared into the ether, and no one talks about it and no one accepts responsibilities for it. And I'd hate to see something like that happen again. I believe strongly in, I'm anti what's actually happened in Afghanistan. I understand the plight, but I think we also have to operate on facts too, not hearsay. Again, the comment was made that there are 12,000 people have applied to come to Australia. Well, I'd like to see that confirmed. That's hearsay at the moment. And I hope that government, but it is a government decision on the amount of people that they allow into Australia. And I hope the government sees fit to allow as many as they possibly can. And I'm quite sure that the community of Orange, being like they have been over many, many decades, would do everything possible to have them here. But we really have to think about government supporting us in housing and those other issues, because it's no good taking a person from here to there and putting them in other conflicting situations. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, if that's possible.
Yeah, well, we've got a motion.
My amendment is leaving out number one, but number
No,
two.
hold it. We're going to deal with them in seriatim. That's probably the best way. Okay. So look, if we look at one, councillor's happy if we go through them in seriatim.
Can I close the debate, Mr. Mayor?
No.
Well, no, yes, no. He may, of course he may, but would you rather?
No, I want to speak against
would you
the motion.
rather, Councillor? I'm talking to Councillor Nugent, Councillor Duffy.
I want to speak against the motion.
You can in a moment.
No, I haven't even spoken against the motion yet.
All right.
You want to close the date?
All right, Councillor Duffy. No,
We're only talking about point one, Councillor Duffy.
Point one. I'm going to speak against that number one because I think it's just a token. It's a motherhood statement.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Duffy, because I just said I wanted to deal with them in seriatim, which we all agreed to, and that's what we're about to do, and you just argued about, and that's exactly what you're doing. So please listen. We're dealing with number one. Now you're speaking against.
I only have a limited education, not like he used to be.
Well, education can't fix ignorance. Councillor Nugent.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I close the debate and then we can go to voting on each of the motions?
I think we can discuss each one, Councillor Nugent, if you wish.
Well, can I close the debate in relation to the first one then?
Yeah, we'll go through 1, 2, 3, and you've got the opportunity to speak and close the debate on each one.
On each one?
Is that okay? I think it's quite reasonable.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so for one, we've had a speaker against. We've got a speaker for, Councillor Nugent.
All right. Well, I'm speaking for then. And
number one, yeah.
Number one, Councillor Duffy says it's only tokenism. I think it's a statement of intent and commitment to the great work that we already do here in Orange. And you said it, Mr. Mayor, that the migrant and refugee families in Orange have contributed enormously to our local economy and to the cultural diversity of this city, and have made it a richer, more interesting place to live as a result. I note that there were some concerns about housing that Councillor Mileto raised, and yes, social and affordable housing is an ongoing issue for Orange and for the whole of the country, pretty much. But when you look at the numbers, if the Australian government took 12,000 refugees from Afghanistan over and above our current refugee intake, so it's not in place of other people coming to Australia, but it's over and above our current intake, that would work out to be about 25 people per local government area across the country. So there's 537 local government areas, so it's only 25 people per local government area. Obviously, that's not going to be equally shared, and there's probably going to be a concentration of refugees resettling in metropolitan areas in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. But it's basically saying we welcome and acknowledge the contributions of refugees, and we would welcome Orange taking our fair share of refugees out here. So I don't think it's just tokenism. I think it's a statement of intent and commitment to our status as a welcome refugee zone.
Well, I will speak against it again in saying we do have intent, and we have actually done it, and we've done it for a number of years. And what we do has nothing to do with that. What do you call it again? A
welcome refugee zone.
I don't think people have migrated to here or settled here, whether they be refugees or migrants, because that we are a welcome refugee zone. I think they come here because they have learnt or heard that Orange is a good place to settle, that we're very, very multicultural society here in Orange, and because we offer the opportunities and the support. That's why I think people come here.
I agree with you, mate. I agree with you.
But I don't think, in saying that, what I'm saying in that, so we're acknowledging the contribution that refugees and migrants have made to Orange. We all agree. I have no problems with that whatsoever, and I support that 500%. And of course we support any Afghan, any families living in Orange, and there are. I also support anyone from any ethnicity living in Orange, right? So if you made that any, which I do regularly, as like last Friday when I said, and I would challenge a lot of councillors wouldn't know if there were some Afghani people on that list or not, because people don't attend. And we've had 400 people go through citizenship ceremonies in Orange this year. So I just don't see what we're saying. Will we offer support? Of course we will. There's no doubt about that. But
so can we put the motion to the vote, Mr. Mayor? Councillor Whitten wants to.
Yeah,
I'm running the meeting.
Who's running this show?
Councillor Nugent, I'm running the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Whitten.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, in point one, I agree with what you've just. I'm going to support point one because anybody who's grown up in Orange or been born here would have remembered the refugee facility that was once where Electrolux is behind Electrolux, which was refugees from all of the countries of Europe after World War II, and Germans, people from White Russians, as you mentioned. So our doors have always and will always be open to refugees in Orange without debate. And it won't be this council or another council in the future that stops them, because they will be part of it. They'll be part of the Australian community, and they can live wherever they choose in this country. So Orange's doors will always be open to refugees, and I'll finish at that, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Whitten. No other speaker. Councillor Hamling, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find where the camera is. Mr. Mayor, yeah, in 2019, we became a welcome refugee zone, committing to welcome refugees into the community. So why do we have to again do this? We've already made the commitment in 2019, and so I'm pretty happy with what we've done there, which probably covers number two, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know why we have to repeat the same sort of thing.
Councillor Turner, was it? Or you just moving your pages?
I will say something, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Referring probably to your comment earlier about the previous refugees we had in town and it didn't work. I'm assuming you were referring to the Sudanese, were you, at the time?
Well, I will say that, yes. I think it was appallingly done by government, by the way.
Well, I'm not as aware as you are of what the situation was, but I know we had what's up to 200 families at one stage living in Orange, and now we've got maybe a handful. I'm not quite sure. But so if we did get an intake of Afghan refugees, we would need to find out what mistakes were made, what we can do to correct it, and why the Sudanese all went back to Sydney, because just by broad understanding, they all went back to be with their families and their relatives, etc., because they felt more comfortable with their own countrymen. Yet we had up to 200 families here in Orange, and they should have been able to support each other, but obviously the system fell down.
Yep.
So I will support it, but if we get the opportunity again, we must see what we did wrong, whether it's us or the state government or the federal government, to make sure that what happened to the Sudanese doesn't happen to the Afghans if they decide to come to Orange.
And some families did remain here, but and they're fantastic contributors to our community. But I think it was how that was organised and done just showed that you can do things correctly. Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to speak against the very first item simply because we're just acknowledging the contribution. I mean, we're taking 50 to 100 years to acknowledge our migrant families. I mean, good God, if it wasn't for the Italians, we wouldn't have much fruit around the place. If it wasn't for the Greeks, we wouldn't have the fish and chip shop. If it wasn't for the Germans, we probably wouldn't have any wine sitting on the tables that used to grow around the area where I come from. I think, it's a bit of an insult to say, look, we're finally going to recognise your input when we live with it day in, day out. I mean, I've got mates who are from the Italian community and for all these communities, and they know very well that I'm a migrant, descendant of a migrant anyway myself. So, I just don't see any sense to that first one. As I said, to me, it's just a motherhood statement.
All right. Councillor Nugent, if you want to finish the debate on that one.
On the first one, I thought I already had, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I know, but I'm giving you the opportunity to.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, people are saying, why do we need to do this again? The reason is because, and why do we need to focus on Afghan refugees? It's because that's the particular issue, the crisis that we're facing, that the country, that the world is facing right at this particular point in time. It's about reaffirming our status as a welcome refugee zone and reaffirming our status as a place, as a wealthy community that has welcomed migrants and refugees for many, many years. And as already acknowledged by Councillor Duffy, we've had migrants and refugees coming to this community for decades. And it's about reaffirming that status and reaffirming the fact that we do welcome and acknowledge the input. And I can't see any harm in re-acknowledging something that we're all saying we agree with.
Thanks, Councillor Nugent. All right, councillors, we're voting on number 1 first of all. All in favour? Against? You've got to have your hand up one way or the other, Scott. All right, 4, please. Thanks, Councillor Nugent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? The motion is carried. Right, we move to number 2. And that is welcome Afghan refugees to settle in our local government area in accordance with our status. Well, again, I'm just not sure what this status as a welcome refugee zone is all about, to be quite frank. We welcome refugees and migrants to Orange. Councillor Munro. Are you muted?
Hooray.
I vote with him.
Yeah, you got me?
Yep.
Okay. Now, look, in regards to this one, I think I'd have no trouble with people coming to Orange, but as the discussion's been had, we need to have government input here to make sure we have the services and the opportunity to, we might only get allocated a dozen people, right? I don't know, dozen families, 10 families, I don't know. But we must, when we do welcome, we must give them the opportunity to have a reasonable outcome and be in a position where they've got support. As you can imagine, many of these people probably don't speak English. Do we have the facilities to translation and all that sort of thing? Do we have that? And if we haven't, it's a government's responsibility to make sure that we have. And if we do take an intake of these refugees, people that are in very much high need, we need to be able to support them properly. So that would be my main thing. So if we can't support them properly, I would disagree with having them here. But if we can support them and government gives us the support to support them properly, well, then I would absolutely welcome them to Orange. So I'd like to know that first before I sort of make the decision on this motion, because I think that's just the most important thing. We need to be able to look after the people we take the right way and be able to communicate the right way. Anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Councillor Munro, any other speakers? Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. As I said, this one here, I'll support this one as long as the wording of Afghan is taken out. I think we should just support all refugees. The third dot point, which clearly states,
just stick to number 2. We're doing number 2.
Yeah, no, but I'm referring. But taking the word Afghan out is also already mentioned. It's mentioned in item number 3 that we're going to talk about. But item number 2, we welcome refugees. I don't care whether they're from Afghanistan or from Zimbabwe or Sudanese or wherever it is. We welcome refugees. I'm 100% behind that. Don't get me wrong. And probably more so, and I've a bit more understanding of what the refugees are like, having a son, having 2 boys twice to Afghanistan, and knows the language and has spoke with them in the various different valleys that he was involved in the infantry. But I just think we should be welcoming refugees. But again, I go back to the question: is what cost is there to us? Is there a cost in this state? Is what there is. Does the federal government give us money for it? That's what my question is. Look, by all means, I welcome all refugees because most of us were refugees ourselves. But I don't. I just don't like isolating people or picking out on different because of their nationality. I think because of the topic we can go whether we what we want, but I'll support it if the word Afghan is taken out.
Yeah, look. Just from my perspective, as I said, I know where I stand with immigrants and refugees, wholeheartedly support them. I'm just disappointed the way perhaps it was written. We've soon forgotten some of those people that have been in detention centres for many, many years, particularly one family I know of with 2 young girls that are still in the detention centre. There doesn't seem to be too many people jumping up and down really out this way about looking after those people, and 2 young children, one at least born in Australia, and they're from a war-torn country
Tamil.
Also, right? Which continues to have all sorts of religious and war problems. We seem to be forgetting about the big picture here about everybody. That's what my only concern. So I'm going to put number 2, unless Stephen, you want to close.
Can I make an amendment on that one, Mr. Mayor? I want to move the amendment. The amendment is to take the word Afghan out.
You got a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor, because I think we should be welcoming everyone.
Yeah.
Got a seconder in Councillor Hamling. Anyone want to speak for or against the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, as I just said, I'll second that because I think in 2019 we already made this commitment and we're reaffirming it. And I don't think in 2019 we didn't have any particular nation in there, or you know what I mean. So I think we welcome refugees to settle, reaffirm our commitment to welcoming refugees in our local government area. Like, I can't see what the problem with that is.
Thanks, Councillor Hamling. Councillor Nugent.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, including Afghan people.
I think Councillor Hamling just said it really. I'm happy if it was to read reaffirms our commitment to welcoming refugees from Afghanistan and other countries to settle in our local government area. Full stop. We don't need to talk about the welcome refugee zone if that's an issue that some people have. So that would be my suggested wording for that one. And the reason I think it's important to acknowledge Afghanistan and people from Afghan at the moment is that this is the issue that we're currently facing. And I think a lot of people in Orange and all across the country were very distressed when we saw what happened when our troops withdrew from Afghanistan and the impact on the local population that has had. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that the reason we're doing this time is because of that situation in Afghanistan. I'm very happy to say we welcome refugees and migrants from all countries, as both Councillor Duffy and Councillor Hamling have said.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maletta.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My concern goes back to the capacity of Orange to be able to house these people. And I'm just wondering whether Orange is the most appropriate regional area to house them. As I previously said, based on the information that I've been provided, most rental accommodation in Orange is not affordable in the reach of families and individuals that are already here. There is a critical shortage in supply of public housing, and some people can wait many years. And we have the longest waiting list for public housing in New South Wales. And with this overwhelming demand already existing in Orange, is it wise to bring new arrivals to Orange, or is there a more suitable location to bring them? Obviously, we're all, have a soft spot for their humanitarian needs, things like that, and we want to see these people have a better life, and I'm totally for that. But there's already hundreds of people seeking affordable housing in Orange, and would it be fair or wise to add more people to the list? That is my question. And if so, as some of the other councillors already indicated, we need the government to give us some direction on how we're going to manage that issue. Certainly we want any immigrants or refugees to come to Orange, but at the present time, the market is very tight and there are people missing out who are already here. There's people suffering from domestic violence issues, things like that. I'm not saying these people aren't worthy to come here, but we really need to look at our housing strategy at the moment to look at what we've already got here with a view of looking to the future. And there is no timeline here that I can see as to when we would see these people possibly come to Orange. There's none of that. So, what type of time frame are we looking at? So I think there are a number of issues which probably need to be resolved before we can start talking, moving forward.
Thanks, Councillor Hamling.
Yeah, yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I understand what Councillor Mileto is saying, but I think the intent would be that we would welcome governments having a conversation with us to welcome refugees here. Now, if we didn't have the housing or if we didn't have certain infrastructure in place, that conversation would take place, and we would, if the government were hell-bent on settling refugees out here, we'd ask them for help. But there's no time frame on this. As you said, Councillor Mileto, we're not expecting people to be coming in next week. So I think the intent, from what I understand, is that we are open to a discussion if that discussion was to take place with certain, whatever government or federal government levels.
Thank you. Look, I'll close the debate there, I think. You have an amendment, and I'll put the amendment first. All in favour of the amendment?
Can I just confirm what the amendment is, Mr Mayor?
Yeah.
The amendment is welcomes refugees to settle in our local government area. Just take out the word Afghan.
Well, I think Councillor Hamling talked about refugees from Afghanistan.
I just said reaffirm
the amendment, Councillor Nugent. That's the amendment. That's not the amendment. he was discussing, he had his right to talk on it. The amendment is just take the word Afghan out, reaffirming that we welcome refugees to Orange.
Yeah, reaffirming's in there, isn't it, Mr. Mayor?
Now, all in favour of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for, against. Russell's against. So we've got 8 for, 1 against. Thank you. The amendment becomes a motion. All in favour? That's everybody. Thank you. We move down to number 3. Stephen. Sorry, Councillor Nugent, I should say.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I've already spoken about, part 3, I've already spoken a number of times on this motion overall. You indicated earlier, Mr. Mayor, that that figure of 12,000 is hearsay. It's more than just hearsay. It's based on information from people in Sydney that work with the local Afghan population and have also worked for the United Nations. And it's not just a figure plucked out of air. It's a figure based on an analysis of figures that they are aware of information that they're aware of. So so the figure of and the motion itself doesn't actually talk about figures. It's in the background. There's, those figures are in the background, but this is basically saying, can we ask the Australian government to review its current commitment to taking Afghan refugees and consider taking a greater intake than we currently have. We know that when Australia was in Afghanistan, we had many local people who worked with the Australian troops, and some of them have been able to get out of Afghanistan, but I think some are still there. And some of those that have got out of Afghanistan are currently stateless and are looking for a country somewhere around the world to resettle in. And I think that Australia could be doing better than 3,000 refugees. And a lot of people that I know in the local community feel very strongly about this issue and have approached me about this issue. And that's one of the reasons why I've raised the motion, because they feel very strongly that Australia could be doing and should be doing more to provide a home for those people who have had to leave Afghanistan for fear of their life, and are looking for somewhere to live. So basically, that's what this motion is doing, is asking the Australian government to review its current intake commitment and to do so over and above the current humanitarian intake that we currently have. So we're not displacing other refugees who from other countries. And yes, you were right, Mr. Mayor, there are a lot of other countries where there are conflicts and there are people who are seeking asylum and seeking refugee status. And we need to be processing their claims in parallel with working with this current crisis that has emerged from Afghanistan. So that's what this third part is about.
Can I just ask you a question then? On the sources of information that you've got that says 12,000 people that have sought to come to Australia so far, is there any truth in what is on the media, the popular media, that a real concern is that some may be terrorists?
Mr. Mayor, I don't.
Any feedback there from your sources?
I don't. I have no feedback to that effect. My understanding is that the people are seeking refugee status here in Australia, or asylum, are genuine refugees, and there's a very strong and detailed process that the Australian government, as we know, through the Border Control Program, goes through in vetting refugee status claims. So I don't think there's any more risk in terms of people from Afghanistan than people from any other country in the world. So this motion doesn't call on the Australian government to forego those processes that they have in place. It's asking us to review the level of intake that we currently have committed to.
Thank you. Councillor Munro, and then.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, look, I think, one thing I have sort of observed over the last years with the government and how we've treated intake of refugees and people who just wanted to come to Australia for a new life. I think they've done a wonderful job, and they've done a wonderful job saving lives with the boats and all that sort of thing that were illegally coming to Australia, all those sorts of things. I think the government's on top of it. I honestly feel that the federal government has things in order in regards to intake, and I'm sure they will vet the immigrants and make sure there isn't any people there that would be contrary to our beliefs in Australia as far as our freedoms and all that sort of thing. I trust, I do trust the government's the way they've acted in the last 10 years or so in regards to immigration, and I think it's probably best left to the federal government to initiate this third one. I acknowledge the first two parts of the motion, but I think this is something bigger than council. I think it's a federal government decision, this one. I do, because there's a bigger picture.
Okay.
So I speak against the third one.
Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll support this one 100%, this one here. But I'd imagine that, as you said earlier yourself, that the federal government would have processes in place, whether it be via detention centres or whatever the case may be. When you use the word detention centre, it just sort of creates a bit of mayhem going around what's actually happening when you look at the situations that you've highlighted yourself. But I support the situation here. I think any Australian, no matter whether it was the Vietnam War ending or the current crisis that we see in Afghanistan at Kabul airport, those things, I think all of us are saying, hang on, maybe we can do some more, and we should be asking the federal government if we can do more. I don't have any problem hesitating that. I'd just also like to sort of reiterate a little bit too. I can't see anyone jumping up and down as regards to our troops that went over there, because they finish up like being treated like the Vietnam troops when they come home. But anyway, I support this 100%, and we'll just move on from there. I'm just a little bit worried that this whole argument seems to be very political outside our jurisdiction, whether it be from a Conservative type of the fence or a Green type of the fence. But the third one I'll support 100%.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. I think I'll put the vote. I think we're going to get it. Councillor Nugent wants to close the debate.
Yeah, just very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the time that we spent on this item. Look, I think, Councillor Duffy raises some issues, but I'm glad to hear that he's supportive of it, of this third motion. It's about asking, calling on the Australian government to do a review. And I think it is, and while it's a federal government issue, I think it's the role of local government, which is the body of government closest to the people, to reflect the views of the people in our LGA. And there's been a lot of people spoken to me about this and said, we're concerned, we'd like to see the Australian government do more to support those refugees who are currently out there, stateless in the world, and looking to resettle somewhere. They have to be resettled somewhere. And we'd like to see Australia do more and take more of its fair share from their point of view. So we're in terms of the role of local government, I think there is a role for local government to reflect the views of the residents and ratepayers that live in our LGA.
Thank you. I just hope the whole world one day can think of the millions and millions and millions of refugees across the world and look at resettling them. Okay, all in favour? Hands, please. Against? Councillor Munro against. So you've got all the others, 8 for, 9 against. Thank you. It's passed. I now move on to
Thank you.
item 5.1, which are the recommendations and resolutions from the policy committees.
Move, Mr Mayor, councillor Hamling.
Move, councillor Hamling, seconded.
Happy to second it, Mr Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
All in favour? Hands, please. Unanimous, thank you. 5.2 is an update on outstanding resolutions of council, including questions taken on notice and notices of motion.
Move the recommendation.
Move, councillor Whitten.
Yeah, I'll second it, Mr Mayor.
And councillor Munro. Any speakers?
Yeah, I just have a quick query on page 43 as regards to matters arising. Requested a letter be sent to the Minister of Local Government commending her on the postponement of the local government elections. And this draft letter completed.
It came out today, didn't it? We saw it today.
Yeah.
No,
Through
that's
Mr.
not-
Chair,
that's not
yes.
true.
Sorry.
Through Mr. Chair, a draft has been circulated to councillors for comment, and that's ready to go out tomorrow if you're all happy with that.
I
We
saw,
have
a draft, I saw a draft asking for COVID-free election.
Well, Councillor Duffy, we've circulated it for comment. We're happy to take your comment. We'll draft it as you see fit.
But in all fairness, Mr Mayor, there was 2 resolutions. The first one here says congratulate Minister Pavey in deferring it till the 4th of December. And the other one the other day was about, hey, we don't care when you have the elections. We want you to guarantee it's going to be COVID-free. There are 2 different things.
Yeah. Hold it. I'm with you. I'm with you. Fair point. Okay, so look, just
I'm glad you agree with me for once, Mr Mayor.
very, very difficult. But look, the point is the Chief Executive Officer has circulated to for any comments, and that was the resolution of a previous council meeting. That we put a draft together, which I worked on with Councillor Duffy and the Chief Executive Officer. That has been circulated to you today. Anyone who wants to add, subtract, or has any suggestions on how it should be altered, because we'd like to go off tomorrow, that's going to the Minister, the Premier, Deputy Premier. That's got to do with a COVID-safe election on the 4th of December.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that's fine. What they're talking about in here, yes, there is, it says action here that a letter go off to, I don't know why it go off to Melinda Pavey.
Hancock, isn't it, Mr Mayor?
Minister Hancock. Yeah, that a letter go to Minister Hancock, congratulate her on putting the council up for December. But would that be null and void now with this letter going off? Councillor Duffy?
I'll accept it. I mean, point's been made.
Yeah.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
happy.
Thanks, Mr CEO. And look, if there's no, please, we want to get that off tomorrow. So
I'll call you in the morning, Councillor Duffy, to run through the final copy, and we'll get that off.
I'm happy with what I commented on today.
Okay,
All right.
it'll go off in the morning.
all councillors happy if we send that off first thing in the morning?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That'll go off in the morning. Okay. So all in favour? Against, thank you. That's unanimous. 5.3, the Central New South Wales Business HQ update. Councillor Miletto has declared an interest in this.
Move the recommendation, Mr Mayor. Councillor Turner.
Moved.
Seconded.
Councillor Turner, seconded Councillor Duffy. Any discussion? There's not. All in favour?
Thank you.
Pass, thank you.
A matter arising, Mr Mayor, sorry, I was on mute, I was going to raise a question. Just wondering why they're using legal firms in Sydney to do their constitution. Can't they use local firms? if we're a member council,
Yeah,
they'd be using local solicitors.
I might
I
ask.
think,
I
yeah.
think Councillor Miletto or the Chief Executive Officer can answer. You can discuss it. You're not in the vote, Councillor Miletto, anyhow. So
I will. All I can do at this stage is I'll put your sentiments across to the CEO of BizHQ. They chose that lawyer, as my understanding, for a particular skill, but I will put that across. They are using a local lawyer for some of the other work on governance. That might please you to hear.
okay. So answer your question, Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All in favour? Thank you. We'd already done that. 5.4 is the project activity September report of 2021.
Happy to move it, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to second it, Mr Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Moved Councillor Duffy. I think it was seconded Councillor Romano in this case.
Just a question, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just with regard to the projects overview for September 2021, I think it's page 88. I'm just looking at the first column, and if we look down to the Spring Hill Oval picket fence issue, installation of picket fence planning, it's blank in whether it's live or anything else. I'm just wondering why it's blank. If somebody could explain to me in the first column where all the others have a status of live, prosper, or collaborate, but Spring Hill has nothing for some reason. I'm just wondering.
Well, I might answer that. You can come in, CEO. I took the CEO out there when did we go out there? Last Wednesday, Thursday, and had a look at the oval and had discussions on the fence. So that's why it's not saying live at the moment. That's the only reason. It will be. It'll be live. So I'll get the CEO to talk to you as chair of that advisory committee. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
All in favour? Against? Thank you. 5.5 is strategic policy review, liquid trade waste. Happy
to move it, Mr. Mayor.
Moved Duffy, seconded Councillor Whitten. No questions. All in favour? Thank you. Against? No one's against it. 5.6 is a development application DA 2854/2021 in brackets 1-8 Current Street. I've declared an interest. I just will be voting on it. That's all.
I'll move it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Turner.
Or Councillor Turner, or who's taking the meeting?
Move Councillor Hamling, second Councillor. I can tell you, I'm just not voting on it. I'm staying in the meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
So any speakers for or against it? All in favour? All in favour. 8 councillors in favour. Thanks. Thank you. 5.7 is the state of investments for August 2021.
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor Whitten. Second, Councillor Munro.
Just got a question, Mr. Mayor. Just with the impact of COVID and the issue of rates and a couple of items coming up a bit later on as regards to what we could be doing, is there much of a difference from over the previous years?
In the sense of previous COVID years?
Well, yeah, not so much COVID years. Yes, COVID years to agree, but I'm talking about, say, from 2006 or 2005.
You're talking about defaulting on payments.
What impact has it had on us?
What? Oh, you're asking what effect COVID has had on our
sorry.
bottom line. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, the impacts on defaults have been very minimal compared to pre-COVID. The ratepayers generally, do pay their rates, even if it is COVID. That we found, particularly the older people, like to pay their bills on time. So we haven't actually seen a big difference.
Okay.
Yeah. Happy with that.
Right, all in favour? Against? Thank you. 5.8 is the fees and charges amendments
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Nugent, seconded. Councillor Miletto. Any discussion? If there's not, all in favour, hands please. Against? Unanimous, thank you. 5.9 is the minutes of the Sport and Recreation Community Committee meeting.
Move, Mr Mayor, councillor Hamling.
Moved Councillor Hamling.
Second.
Seconded was Councillor Whitten.
Mr Mayor, can I just touch on something real quickly? Just in the papers there, we've had a report on the last term of the Sport and Rec Committee, and as you can see, there's been a lot of work done, and I'd like to thank all councillors and council staff, yourself, Mr Mayor, of support of sport and recreation in the city. And as we've seen what's going on, there's a lot more happening in that space. So yeah, it's been a very, very productive, and comments to me from most of the sporting people and even the recreation people is that we're doing a great job, and what we've got planned into the future is fantastic as well. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Can I just ask a question for the chairman, Mr. Chairman of the sporting thing? Was there any real level of relief from the Sports Council that we moved on with the Sir Jack Brabham Sports Precinct?
I beg your pardon? Relief?
Any real...
were they happy?
Mr Mayor, yes, they were, and obviously comments to me privately from the Sports Committee members were, they were all for that project, so they are, and they're looking forward to what the end product is going to look like.
Good to hear.
Yeah, okay. All in favour? Thank you very much. 5.10, I've got those around the wrong way, sorry, is the fees and charges amendments. Did I get that wrong? No, I did that one. I haven't got my 5.9 are minutes of the Sport and Recreation Committee, which we've just done.
We just did it.
Yeah, in my notes, it's got 5.10. It's a clerical error. So my mistake, I apologise. Right. That should see the end of that part. We now look at the closed meeting. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting of Orange City Council.
Mr Mayor, we have no such correspondence.
Thank you. In accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government General Regulation of 2005, in the opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10A brackets 2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a confidential session of the council meeting closed to the press and the public. 6.5 are the redactions. Submission of redactions. The reason for confidentiality, this item is classified confidential under the provisions of section 10A brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 1993, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public for business in relation to information that would, if disclosed, prejudice the maintenance of law. 6.6 is lease the clubhouse at Mulder Park, and that's a late agenda item there. The reason for confidentiality is this item is classified confidential under the provisions of section 10A2 of the Local Government Act, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public for business in relation to information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business.